You are listening to Science Coast with Mallory Havens and
Chris White.
And
Sarah Pariseau.
Welcome, everybody. So today we wanted to talk to you about the very unscientific world of cryptids.
All right, what's a cryptid?
Anything that is like one of those mysterious creatures out there, like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster or anything along that line.
The Easter Bunny?
Yes.
That's real, Chris.
Santa Claus. If you have children,
So
plug their ears. But let me first say that science cannot prove or disprove these things. So we can only use the scientific method and hypotheses to test things that are testable. And you can't test ghosts. You can't test gods. You can't test Bigfoot.
But you can search for Nessie.
And Bigfoot.
And people do.
They do. So why
And there is evidence that these things exist because there's pictures.
Whoa.
What, you haven't seen them?
I have seen, quote unquote, pictures, but I don't know that they are real.
Wait, pictures aren't real?
They don't have.
It's a deep fake.
Could be a deep fake, or like that's where you can come in with science actually and test the pictures and see if there's evidence of editing.
So what about all those shows that try to measure like ghost activity in like a abandoned warehouse or something? What do they think they're measuring?
I'm not entirely sure what they're measuring. They look for like electronic variation, or they make those weird. I mean, they try to explain their equipment where they're like,
Right.
oh, this is radio waves that they can pick up the energy and then form words. But like, how do you validate that piece of equipment?
So why are you thinking about this topic?
Because I'm going ghost hunting this weekend.
Are you going to bring one of those pieces of equipment?
I don't own any, so no.
Wait. You're going ghost hunting.
Yeah, I also don't believe in ghosts, but I am going ghost
Where
hunting.
are you going ghost hunting?
The Amboy Railroad Museum in Amboy, Illinois.
Are you going by yourself?
No.
Wait, so what happened in Amboy, Illinois that would lead to a ghost presence?
I don't know. It's just one of the, you can buy tickets to these types of things, and like they have really haunted locations. So I've been to like old shut down jails, and I've been to
Wait,
former
you've done this before.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're
Yes.
a repeat customer.
Yes. I've been to like old infirmaries, stuff like that.
So what do you see?
I haven't seen anything, but I do get scared.
So I had friends who went to Gettysburg College, and they swore they saw ghosts out on the battlefield in the middle of the night. But that is a place where if there were to be ghosts somewhere, probably would be. That's why I'm just curious, like what sort of traumatizing event happened at some of these places?
Yeah, there's always a backstory to
Right.
it. And then usually you start a ghost hunt with a tour with a historian that will tell you about the property and what.
Can I put quotes around historian as you say that? I put air quotes.
You can. And I think usually these people, some of them are straight historians will actually just tell you about the property. But a lot of times it's just somebody who works for the property and knows the history of it, plus the supposed hauntings. But again, you cannot test these things with science.
Yet we're talking about it
Yeah, we are.
on a science podcast.
Yes, we are. But I think that's the whole point, right? So how do you prove someone's lying to you about cryptids,
But
or
are they
prove
lying?
that they're not?
Are they lying, or are they simply misinformed?
Could be misinformed, or maybe science just hasn't figured out how
Because
to test these things.
I know that this notion that someone's lying, but if they're sincere, is it really a lie if they're sincere? If they sincerely believe it to be true, is it a lie?
No.
It's a delusion.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, because I know that I think we jump to that too much as scientists. Like there's black and white, there's truth, and there's non-truth.
There's Bigfoot or there's not Bigfoot.
Right. Yet I think that there's a lot of people who very honestly, sincerely believe certain things that just from a scientific perspective can't be proven.
Right.
So I don't even want to say that they're not true. It's just that they can't be proven. And after this notion of what happens in my brain, near-death experiences, and people have all kinds of really interesting things to say after they've had these near-death experiences. And is that real? Is it not? And I think the only thing I can say is I can't scientifically prove one way or the other what it is.
Right. I heard a Bigfoot person say, unlike the common belief that Yetis are white, they're not. They're brown. And I was like, how do you know that?
Gosh.
That's like an interesting hill to die on.
They're covered with fur. And by the way, I did see a Yeti at a Colorado Rockies game. So
Is that the mascot?
Oh.
I'm sorry to tell you that. But maybe they're like Arctic foxes where they turn white in the wintertime to camouflage, and then during off season they revert to brown.
I just think it's interesting that people feel as if they have to assign a color to a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So people are oddly particular about random things.
It's true.
Yeah.
So if you guys were going to look at evidence of a cryptid that someone presents to you, how would you go about deciding whether or not it was valid?
So in the good old days, when I was a kid, the evidence was always photographs.
Mm-hmm.
And so there would always be these TV shows where the evidence that the Loch Ness Monster, because that was the big cryptid when I was a kid, was the Loch Ness Monster.
Nessie.
Yes, Nessie. And so they would show this photograph that would be very suggestive, and they would use that as proof. The same thing is true for UFOs, and that's happening even now. There's congressional inquiries about UFOs, and almost all of the evidence is based on either some video or or photographs that have anomalies.
Right.
There are parts of the image that can't be easily explained. And I think it's very interesting and an insight into human nature that if we don't obviously know what the answer to something is, we make big leaps and assumptions as, well, this must be aliens then. If I can't explain it, then it's something supernatural. When my scientific background has shown me time and again that if I don't understand something, if I do a little bit of research, I can usually figure it out. And there's always been an explanation for why this is true.
I think that goes to sort of the conspiratorial thread of human nature. There has to be some big secret. There has to be some like outlying thing instead of like, no, it's reflection of the water and this looks really funny this time of year or whatever. It has to be something like earth shattering.
Yeah. I think there's always like, sometimes you'll just get creeped out. Right?
Yeah.
So, like, when you're a kid and you're coming up from the basement and suddenly you're like, oh, I better run up the stairs.
I totally did that. Did you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Or, like, you turn out the lights in a room and you have to get out of there really fast. You just feel fear, and then people will attribute that to a threat. And if you can't see a threat, then it's an existential threat. You have to fill something in. Mm. Or maybe people are more prone to, like, if I hear a creak in my house, my first thought isn't, oh, that's a ghost. Like, is someone walking around up there? My first thought is, oh, the wood's moving. Or is it more humid than normal? So I think people are programmed in different ways, but also, how could I go about trying to, is it worth the effort of, like, looking at every piece of lumber in my home to figure out which one creaked and why? Or is it just easier to be like, it's a ghost?
And there's a lot of, as far as creeks are concerned, I had the same experience actually yesterday where I was in a room of my house and there was a little, popping sound just from literally the other side of the room. And, I turned and I looked and I didn't see anything. And I went back to what I was doing. I wasn't in the house during the Arctic plunge from several years ago, but my wife was saying that the house was making all kinds of noises and just popping and cracking all night long as the temperature was dropping. But I think a lot of people want to attribute these things to supernaturals.
Paranormal.
Criptids.
It's Bigfoot trying to break in.
Ghosts. What's your favorite cryptid?
Chupacabra.
Oh, so for those who don't know, can you explain Chupacabra a little bit?
No, I can't. It's like, it's like some sort of weird feral flying dog /
vampire.
Yeah, with vampire tendencies in Mexican culture. And I think it maybe has some root in indigenous folk tales, but, it just persists. Like, don't let the chupacabra get you.
Yeah. Why is it your favorite?
Because it's so weird. It's so weird. And there's lots of like folk images about it and things like that. You wonder how it came across. Like, is it, something kids made up like 500 years ago that somehow has persisted and spread?
Or was it like a diseased rabid dog that like lost all of its hair?
Right. And there's a kernel of truth in it somewhere. It's like how people used to think mermaids existed. They're really manatees, right? That's what they think.
Or dugongs.
Is that really true? I never knew that.
Sailors came up with tales of mermaids, and they've figured out over time that they were seeing manatees under the water, and they didn't understand what they were because they have kind of like a female silhouette seen from a distance.
Yeah, and dugongs, which are like manatees, except they have a manatee's tail is like a beaver's, like a flipper. Dugongs have the split in the tail, like a mermaid at the end. So dugongs are also thought to have been mermaids because I think manatees are just native to the
Caribbean.
Yeah.
No, it's same thing, I think.
Would a unicorn be a cryptid?
Those were narwhals. That's what they actually think, the sort of medieval belief in like the power of unicorn horns and stuff like that. They think they were narwhal horns that like traders brought in. And people are like, this must have been attached to a fantastical horse. But it was a narwhal.
And then there's Krampus.
Yes.
Oh, can I take back my answer? Because I think Krampus might be better.
Yeah,
Chupacabra.
Can you explain Krampus?
Krampus is like the very Germanic flip side of Santa in that he doles out punishment for bad children
he
around
kidnaps
Christmas.
them, right?
He kidnaps them, and I think he takes them to Spain.
That's the
Wait a minute.
Netherlands.
I want to go to Spain.
Oh, is that the Dutch?
Yeah,
That's
the Dutch one
thing.
is they take the bad children to Spain.
Yeah.
Is that punishment?
Yes.
Because they're enslaved there.
If you're a Dutch person, then that's punishment. You have to go
Well,
to
there's like
Spain.
a whole racial element to that
Yes.
too that's very controversial. But Krampus is just to like dole out punishment via like switches to bad children.
Yeah, I was in the Netherlands at Christmas one year, and I was very astonished by the racism involved in that holiday tradition.
There's blackface and stuff like that. It's all very problematic.
Yes.
But
Sigh.
anyways, Krampus is terrifying. Especially if you see like the old-timey Germanic depictions of him with like horns and creepy
And
tongue
goat legs.
and goat legs and just very evil.
So now you're making me think of mythology. Mm-hmm. And, ancient Greek and Roman mythology with all of the, Pegasus and all these other things. I mean, are those cryptids too?
I think so. I think anything that is like a mythological being that people think they have seen and try to provide evidence for would be a cryptid. But maybe cryptologists, if that's what they're called, would disagree with me on that definition.
So your position is that even though many people have faith that that various cryptids exist, and they might even believe that, oh no, that's fantasy, but this one over here, this one's real. I've seen it with my own eyes. That it doesn't pass the scientific test of reproducible evidence.
Right, and a testable hypothesis, where it's very hard to prove a negative. So you can't like prove something doesn't exist, right? Because you can only prove it does exist.
Right.
And if you can't, how do you actually prove something exists unless you don't just have photographic evidence, but until somebody actually brings a Bigfoot back from the wild, then there is no way to prove it exists.
Final question for you, Mallory. How did you get into this in the first place?
Ghosts or what?
Yeah, you're going out on a ghost hunt. And you've told us about you've been doing this for some time now.
What traumatizing event happened to you?
Oh, where would you like to begin?
From the beginning.
I don't know. I just think it's fun to get scared. And so at Halloween, I always like to go do those haunted houses, but I never get truly scared because I know they're actors. So I try to occasionally get that adrenaline rush out of just creeping myself out.
You like horror movies too?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. So you've been listening to Very Unscientific Coast with Mallory Havens and
Chris White.
And
Sarah Pariseau.
the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Lewis University. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. The Lewis University name and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. This podcast was produced at the WLRA Podcast Studios at Lewis University. Visit lewisu.edu for more information about Lewis University. Thanks for listening.
Catch you next time.